how do you feel like this spring just went for you in general?
Yeah, I think broad overview, what we wanted to get accomplished in 15 practices, we really did. I think number one, growth in all of our position groups. Creating depth, having guys get experience that maybe haven't had that experience or game-like experience. Those guys got really meaningful reps. So I think there was really great growth there. This whole the process piece of it, of maximizing every practice, coming out, understanding, starting to create really good practice habits, understanding what we're trying to get out of each practice. I thought our kids did a really good job in that regard. And then, the next part is going to be, we're going to continue to see, and that's the leadership piece, the player leadership. And last year's group did a great job of that, from our seniors to the guys that had leadership roles. They did a great job. And we're going to find out about this group. And I think that's going to be critical to our success, because, to be honest with you, there'll be expectations now, and how we handle that, how we approach our day-to-day can't change. It's almost going to intensify. And it'll be based on that leadership group. And if we can handle it, good things will happen. And if we can't, it'll be a struggle.
I saw, maybe it was Urban Meyer said after the spring, they come up with a list of 20 best players on each side, and then they game plan from there. What is your post-spring process in terms of starting to game plan around these players you have?
Well, it'll start Monday, and we do something really similar. As a staff, we'll kind of have a state of the program, about a 3-hour meeting on Monday. I'll go through the entire board. What I think our strengths are, our weaknesses are right now, what we've got to get accomplished in the next 12 weeks, which I think is really, really important for this football team, as any team in the country. And what happens in May, June, and July dictate really what happens in September, October, November. So, we'll start there. We certainly, players formations place kind of starts with that too as well. And then we work from there. Last year we were able to capitalize on that and make some really important moves within the roster to help ourselves, and really benefited from a really good summer a year ago, and we're going to have to do the same thing this year.
At the beginning of the spring, you talked about the importance of the offensive line developing to take the next step. Do you feel better about that group after the spring?
Well, at least we're starting to create an identity. There has been zero identity for the last 2 years. Now you see, number one, there's a mindset of trying to be physical, and a mindset of doing the little things that it takes to be a really good offensive line, winning critical situations, having the ability to line up, put your hand in the ground, come off the football and block somebody and sustain. And you see that group has made really good growth there. But obviously, until the lights come on and these guys actually go out and do it consistently, it's still a little bit of an unknown, and that group's going to really have to win the next 10 weeks, because there's still some of those guys that got to continue to get bigger, continue to get stronger. They're redshirt freshmen and redshirt sophomores. Their development is absolutely critical this time of year, and it's going to be really fascinating to watch that group work here through the next 10 weeks.
Is the safety with Newell, he seems like a standout.
Mm-hmm.
Does the fact that a kid like that grew up an Iowa State fan, has been going to these games for 20 years, does that help behind the scenes? Passion?
I think it has to. Here's a kid that, you're right. He knew way more. The first day I went into him to talk about Iowa State, first day on the job was Colin Newell, and he knew way more about it than I did. And I appreciated that. And guys like him and Chase Allen, who have grown up in a program like this, they've lived it. Their investment rate has been so good, and their ability to infect and empower the guys around them has been really powerful. So, getting guys that have a great understanding, Zach Peterson's coming in now with that same mentality and that same upbringing. Those things are powerful, and I think they do infect your program. They have a real positive impact on what the culture looks like behind the scenes.
Is the safety spot kind of, when you were talking about concerns, just from an idea that you still have a couple of starting spots up for grabs and maybe some question marks at depth at safety, is that one of your biggest concerns going into the summer?
Yeah, I think on the defensive side, that's the one area where there are some unknowns still, and I think there was a lot of growth in some of those areas. Like I said, if I had a defensive MVP from the spring, it'd be Greg Eisworth. He's a kid that really flourished and really came out, and so it's great to see that. And then you got Braxton Lewis, and there's a lot of guys that have grown. But again, until those lights come on, until you have to make in-game adjustments, and so you have to play, I think it's really hard to sit here and say, well, that's the guy. But and some of those guys. Keontae Jones got to get bigger and stronger. The next 10 to 12 weeks for him are going to be imperative for our success. So, and again, what's it going to look like? What's that depth chart going to look like as we go back? We look at all the corners, all the defensive backs, who plays where, what positions, and how do we sort those guys out so we can put the best unit on the field that we possibly can.
You've always been a person to give a redshirt freshman a shot in the offensive line, not just to play, but I mean to get significant minutes. I mean, did you do it at Toledo very much, or here just out of necessity? Or?
Well, the best two kids we've ever had and we've ever coached are still playing in the NFL. Zach Karen, Greg Mance, both started as redshirt freshmen. At Toledo, that group that Jeff played on, which was a really special group. I mean, there was two guys on that group that started as redshirt freshmen, and the next two started as redshirt sophomores. So, to me, I don't think it's not a bad thing if you're ready to do it. And to me, it takes a really special individual for me to say something nice about you on the offensive line, to be honest with you, because I think I'm probably more critical of that group than I am of any group. And it really says something, I think, a lot about, like in our example right now with Colin. I think it says a lot about what his ability level and his talent level is. And so, he's not perfect, and I'm not ready to crown him king, but I also know that he's a really special young man to be able to do what he's done at this level in a short amount of time.
How'd your quarterbacks progress this spring?
Yeah, I think some really good things from you're talking a guy like Kyle, where I think for Kyle, understanding who he is. When Kyle's played at his best and plays his best, here's the qualities that Kyle does. And I think working through that this spring was really good for him. I think you saw a lot of growth, and he had a great day today, which was great to see. You leave spring practice, he's got a great day. Zeb, I think you see his progress. I'd say for him, he's probably made the most strides, because here's a young guy, now first time that he's really, that first year, last year he got shortcutted because he had the ACL surgery, so he really didn't get any live reps. He just threw 7-on-7. Now he gets a whole spring, and his progress and growth was really good to see. And then obviously Real, a freshman getting those 15 practices, making mistakes, being able to do some good things, I think really beneficial for that group. And those are three guys, and none of those guys were the man. We weren't building an offense around any of those three guys a year ago, where now we can take, and just kind of back to your question, what do you do? What are their strengths? What can they do well? And I think we got a really good beat on it, and I think us having a good beat on it allowed us to tailor offensively for those guys to be able to grow in what they can do. And now we can really measure it out and be ready to rock and roll by the time we get to the fall. So I'm really happy with that unit. Some good days, some tough days, and that's the nature of spring practice, but I thought all those guys end on a really positive note.
What does Ryan need to do to either win that middle job or someone else to win it? What do you look for between now and fall to that middle linebacker?
Yeah, I think consistency, it'll be really fun to watch today's scrimmage. I think it's hard for me to comment on today's scrimmage without seeing the film of it already, but you see 34 flying around the football field. He's hard to miss because he's a big physical kid. And, I think the one thing that Orion has done, and, why it was easy to talk about him earlier this week, is scrimmage 1, scrimmage 2, every practice, that guy's making plays. You see him getting better. And, again, you're asking a redshirt freshman to step into a role, whether it's a starter or playing significant minutes. Those guys have to be able to put good days together. And, for Orion, it's finishing in the classroom. It's having a great summer. It's all those little things that, for me as a coach, that says, hey, you're mature. I can handle it. I can trust you when it's November and it's time to go win a championship. You're going to do the little things that it takes to be successful. So, I think that's the biggest thing, not only for Orion, but any of those young players in our program, to show we can trust them, that they can handle what we're asking them to do.
What does he do well? Like, what stands out about him?
Well, he's physical. I think the biggest thing is, and one of the good things for me is I got to watch him, in that, in the Waterloo West game, play against Devin, both those guys senior year, and I'll never forget. He had ankles. He had missed the last 3 games, and he came in. And the thing that I remember is, man, this kid's got such a innate ability to track the football. He's a great blitzer. He sees the field really well, and he can run sideline to sideline. And it's been really fun now as he's settled in. He understands the defense. He understands what's being asked of him, to see some of those qualities that you saw out of high school start to transcend into the collegiate level. And so, he's a physical, strong, really talented football player. And his end potential is maybe as good as anybody in our program. But again, how fast can we get him there? How fast can he be that guy? How consistent can he be at that spot? But I think he's got some really unique traits at the linebacker position, and it's great to have size, and he's got it, and it'd be great to be able to run with that size.
What was today like? Like, did you just do what you would have done out here, or was it different? Or?
Yeah, I think really similar. We got it from right around 72, 73 plays. It was offense versus defense, and really mirrored the last 3 scrimmages that we had. And we would have done the same thing if we were outside. I think the only thing that maybe changed a little bit is, like I said, is we could, instead of maybe being a little bit more vanilla out here, we were able to really take schematically what these young guys have been doing and needed. And we were able to just continue with that, and I thought that was really big. So, I think a huge win for us today, and the reality of the weather piece of it. Maybe, like I said, it's a blessing in disguise that we were able to practice this way, and I thought our football team needed it.
How much scouting goes on during these spring games though? Are you worried about a Northern Iowa or I guess South Dakota State guy being up in the
Yeah, I think as coaches, you're always nervous about that stuff. You're like, man, who's got a camera out, who's filming this thing, and it is what it is. But I think at the end of it, you still have to do what you do best, and I'm also one of those guys that I really believe that stuff to a point. But there's a point too where at the end of it we have to do what we do well, and then we got to get really good at it and not worry about what other people do or see that we do.
Do you have moles at other places?
Gosh, I don't know.
Well,
Are you looking for a job?
No, I wasn't going to ask that question until you said that it might happen.
Yeah. So
I guess that's not against the law.
it's not against the law, but I think my whole thought is me being worry about us.
We know your other 2 safeties. Who kind of fits in the star safety, and how much different is the star than the free or strong?
Yeah, and it just depends, really package-wise, what we're trying to get accomplished out of that position, and there's such an eclectic group back there, guys like DeMonte Ruth, who's such a valuable player, can do a multitude of different things, DeAndre Payne, Lawrence White, Braxton can do some of those things, and I think each week, as the game plan goes, you got multiple guys that can fit into some of those different spots in different areas, and you can mix and match. And that's why I said I think one of the really neat things for us now is we've got 15 really good practices. Let's evaluate where are we, what's our personnel, what's a dime package, a nickel package, what's our base package look like defensively, and then the same thing offensively. What's 10 personnel, 11 personnel, 12 personnel. What's that look like? What's that feel like? And then what are we trying to get accomplished? But the neat thing is we can do some of those things. 2 years ago, really limited to do some of those things. Last year, a little bit of growth. I think this year we can do more multiple in what we want to be and how we need to play football. It's a game where it's changing so much that if you're just trying to play with one personnel or one position group, it's really tough.
Did you come out